now introduce our first speaker, Dr. Fatih Birol. Dr. Birol is the chief economist for the International Energy Agency in Paris. He is responsible for the IEA World Energy Outlook publication, which is recognized as the most authoritative source of strategic analysis of global energy markets. Mr. Birol, we are very honored to have you with us today, and I will now leave you the floor.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, let me thank the organizers for inviting me to this very prestigious meeting. When we look at the global energy system, I can say we have many challenges, but I would like to note 3 of them, which I believe serious strategic challenges we are facing today. The first one, which I am not going to talk about today, but very crucial, is the very fact that today 1.4 billion people, about 20% of global population, they have no access to electricity. Mainly in sub-Saharan Africa, India, Pakistan, Bangladesh. And this is an energy issue, an economic issue, a development issue, and maybe beyond those, an ethical, a moral issue. The second challenge is the challenge that we are all facing today very seriously, namely the competitiveness of the economies. And the third one is another vital challenge, the challenge of climate change. So today, I will try to look at the 2 issues, economic competitiveness and the climate change, in the light of the recent changes in the global energy system and in a forward-looking manner. We have published at the end of last year our World Energy Outlook. And the main message coming from the Outlook was that the global energy system is shifting and shifting rapidly. Governments, companies, individuals who are not able to read this shift will be losing in the energy game, and the ones who are able to read the game, what are the drivers and the consequences of this shift, will definitely profit and contribute to this shift. And according to our analysis, there are 3 drivers of this shift, what is going on in the global energy markets. The first one is, in a few surprise countries, there is an unexpected, for many, unexpected growth of unconventional oil and unconventional gas. United States, Canada, Australia, many other countries are pushing the so-called shale gas and shale oil projects. And this is changing the game substantially, both in terms of the economic competitiveness and in terms of climate change. And I will come to that in a minute. The second is what we see, what is happening in the nuclear industry after the tragic event in Fukushima. Some countries in Europe, Germany, Switzerland, a referendum in Italy, took some radical changes in their nuclear policy. Japan is considering and reconsidering again its nuclear policy. And in some countries where nuclear is very important, such as France, there is a hot debate about the future of nuclear power. And therefore, while we see and expect the growth of nuclear in several emerging countries, there are question marks in Europe and others about the future of the nuclear expansion in those countries, with all its consequences on the economic competitiveness and on the climate change that I will come in a minute. The third driver of this new or the change in the global energy map is coming from an angle which we do not read, which we do not observe and note very frequently. Namely, many countries are now pushing the energy efficiency button. We have been talking about energy efficiency years and years, many of us here, but now those energy efficiency talks are transformed into legislations with a law force. In Europe, we have now an energy efficiency directive. United States, both the first and the second Obama administration has successfully introduced new energy efficiency standards. China, the most important one, in China's new 5-year plan, there is a very strong target in terms of energy efficiency improvement. And these energy efficiency momentum, ladies and gentlemen, not necessarily driven by the climate change concerns, as we tried to do, as many people tried to do in the last 10 years to convince the policymakers. The main driver of energy efficiency momentum is the issue of cost, bringing the cost of energy down to increase the competitiveness. So these three elements, what is happening in the shale oil and shale gas, second, the changes in the nuclear policy of some countries, and on the demand side, energy efficiency moves, giving a different slant to demand expectations, gives us a new global energy map. And this map will have implications for the geopolitics and at the same time the relative economic competitiveness of countries. One issue I wanted to highlight, which I will not talk about oil a lot today, but oil is very important for our life, and Mr. Ursel mentioned the trade deficit of France, which is not very different in other countries. We don't talk about the oil prices, high prices after the $147 2008, but ladies and gentlemen, it is not important what is the price of oil one day. It is important the average price of oil for a given year. When you look at the year 2012, last year, oil prices averaged $112, which was the highest oil price annual average in the history. And this has implications for the many countries' trade balances, and especially for Europe, because Europe is going through a very fragile economic recovery process. And this year, if the prices 2013 stay at these levels, we expect the European oil and gas import bill will hit 500 billion euros, a major burden for the European economic recovery. Last point about the recovery is, about the context is on the climate change. There is one issue which doesn't go through my head. Why it doesn't go through my head? Because I found it a bit surprising. Two trends. When we look at the carbon dioxide emissions, which we do every year in our World Energy Outlook, they are increasing significantly. And at the same time, similar to that, parallel to that, I should say, the number of extreme weather events are also increasing. Only last couple of months, we saw the Sandy in the United States, drought, a major drought in Australia, very challenging weather conditions in Middle East and elsewhere. This is one trend, as a result of climate change with the CO2 emissions. But the other trend, which doesn't go through my head, is the following. The importance of climate change is declining in the agenda of the policymakers. Normally, when this one goes up, the CO2 emissions and the number of extreme weather events, the interest should also go up. But the interest is sliding down, which is definitely very bad and alarming news for all of us. So, after this setting the context, let me look at a bit the future. One issue that I wanted to bring to your attention, there are many colleagues here who look at the global energy pictures. I wanted to bring to your attention the countries, the OECD countries, namely the so-called the industrialized countries, US, Canada, Europe, Japan, Korea, and the others. In the mid-70s, their share in the global energy demand was about 2/3. And very soon, their share is going to go down to 1/3, and the increase of global energy demand is coming from China, India, and Middle East. These are the new 3 drivers of global energy demand, and of course, all other countries. And what does this mean? This means the following, very simple, with one sentence. Center of gravity of the global energy demand is moving to east very, very rapidly. If the demand is moving to east, investments, interest, policy concentration, and also CO2 emissions will also come from east as well. Now, I know that the colleagues here do not work on oil and gas, perhaps on a daily basis, but as I said, they are all affecting to each other, and I wanted to share with you one key finding of our study. And even if you don't work on oil, you listen to the news, you listen to the foreign policy news, and these are all very related. What did we say? We said the following. Many, many years in the United States, oil production, domestic oil production was declining, and as a result of the unconventional oil technology, now we see a V shape. It is now increasing very strongly. Already last 2 years, we saw a substantial increase. And as we said in November, we expect around 2017, if not before, United States will overtake Saudi Arabia as the largest oil producer of the world. On the natural gas front, again the same story. Domestic production of natural gas in the US was declining, and as a result of the shale gas revolution, which the World Energy Outlook already foresaw 2009, 4 years ago, we see the US total gas production is increasing, and we expect any time United States will overtake Russia as the largest gas producer of the world. So which means maximum within 10 years of time, if not earlier, United States will be the #1 oil producer of the world and #1 gas producer of the world. And of course, this will have major implications for many, many things. One of the issues is energy security. And this is a major topic for all the countries, major concern for all the countries in the world. For example, China. It is many of the colleagues work on China a lot here. In China, today, about 15% of the gas is imported, and about 50%, half of it, oil is imported. And for China, it's a major concern. We recently had the Chinese Communist Party Congress, and I'm sure you all followed very closely. One of the 3 topics which were discussed there was energy security and Chinese energy security for the future. But other countries are the same, India, Europe, Japan. And when you look at the future, with the current policies, if we don't change our policies, when we look at the future, the oil and gas import dependency of all the countries are increasing. China, significant increase, both oil and gas imports. India, Europe, a huge increase in Europe dependency. Japan is not increasing because already 100%, it cannot go beyond that. Japan has already reached that level. But all the countries are increasing substantially, except one country, which is the United States, going completely the opposite direction. US is set to become or turn to be a gas exporter, and US oil imports are going to go to a minimum. And we think, ladies and gentlemen, US will not need to import any oil from Middle East very soon. And you all know that this is a major debate in the United States since a long time about the oil imports. So this will also have major implications. Now, this is what is happening in the world, and how does it affect the Europe and others? When we, in the year 2009, when we said in the World Energy Outlook, a silent revolution is starting in North America, many colleagues in Brussels and elsewhere said, it can start, it can happen, but it shouldn't have any implications for Europe because we don't have much shale gas resources. And this is totally wrong. Not partially, but totally wrong. And I am going to show you a few things why I think it is totally wrong. First of all, in terms of the prices. This is the European gas prices in the last 5 years, and this is the United States gas prices. Until very recently, they moved very closely together, very, very close. However, after the shale gas revolution in the United States, we saw a major divergence between the prices. In Europe, we have now up to 5 times higher natural gas prices compared to the United States. I do not know any other strategic commodity where you have such a big divergence of the prices, and of course, this will have major implications for the entire economy and the energy system. You can run in Europe, but you cannot escape from these realities. And one of the implications on this is the following. When the gas penetrated the US energy markets, electricity generation, 5 years ago, the share of gas in the US electricity generation was about 50%, and now it is about, in 5 years of time, it went down to 30%. The coal share, the share of coal was 50%, and it went down to 30%, and the gas increased substantially. So, what happens? That coal, which became available in the United States, has been exported. And now, this is the coal exports from United States to Europe, and now Europe is getting a lot of American coal, much cheaper than the natural gas, and the coal is enjoying a very nice time in Europe. Before I enter, or we all enter this room, if Mr. Ursel would allow me to make a small enquete, small survey among all the colleagues here, can you please tell me what do you think, which are the 3 top countries, regions, where the coal consumption increased the most last year? Everybody put China first, India second, third Indonesia, blah, 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 blah. However, ladies and gentlemen, yes, China was the first country where you saw the highest increase in the coal consumption, but the second growth, highest growth of coal consumption in the world was in Europe, the most climate-friendly region in the world. And this is the highest growth since Second World War in Europe, mainly as a result of coal becoming cheap and making inroads in the European electricity generation. Germany, which is a very environmentally sensitive country, in Germany today, 6 gigawatts of coal-fired power plants are under construction. And these are not plans or these are not forecasts, this is under construction in Germany. These are the realities of life to tell you that what happens in the United States and other countries will have an impact on everybody. You cannot escape from this. Global energy markets have major trade ties. So what can Europe do because of this gas prices situation? Europe can do a couple of things, and one of them is crucial, I believe. Currently, European gas contracts, mostly 75%, are indexed to oil prices, and they are very, very expensive. And they are not reflecting the current situation in the gas markets. But the good news is, at least an opportunity for European policymakers and for the companies, within the next 10 years of time, a substantial portion of these long-term contracts are coming to an end. Now, Europe can do two things. Either renegotiate those contracts or looking at the alternatives. And Europe has strong hands now to renegotiate those contracts or looking at the alternatives, because gas markets, when those contracts were made, were the markets of the sellers. Gas markets are very quickly turning to be a market of buyers now, and Europe should, I believe, make use of that. Now, I mentioned to you that today, with the current prices in Europe, coal is the preferred choice in many examples. And having the CO2 prices, carbon prices, very low, this doesn't help to, which is about $8 per ton, which is not enough to make the gas competitive vis-à-vis coal. And we did look what kind of carbon price is needed in order to have a parity here with this gas and coal prices, and the price we would need is a bit far-fetched. We need $67 per ton, which is, looking at the current situation in the European carbon markets, which is, I think, not a very likely prospect. And the more the divergence between gas and coal prices get bigger, the higher CO2 prices we would need. Now, let me look at a bit the outside of Europe. What is going on in the other markets, what we expect in a current policies context, with the policies we have, how the energy, electricity generation look like. In Japan, we expect there will be more gas and renewables with a lot of implications on the Japanese trade numbers, negative implications. In Europe, lots of renewables and gas to come. Again, United States, gas we expect to come and renewables, but all these green bars you see under the assumption that the government subsidies on renewables will continue, on which there are lots of discussions now. With that assumption, they will grow. India will grow substantially, and of course, we have, as Mr. Ursel also mentioned, we have also China. China is growing immensely. China, just to put in a context, the capacity additions underlined, additions of China in the next 20 years is equal to the current capacity of United States plus Japan. So China will add 1 United States and plus 1 Japan. Just showing you how important it is, the decisions which will be made in China for China, but also through different linkages for the rest of the world. In the future, when in Europe, when you want to look at your energy policies, you shouldn't only look at the Brussels, but more and more to Beijing in order to understand what is expecting you in terms of energy and in terms of other related issues. Now, when we look at the nuclear power, as I said in the beginning, we expect it is coming mainly from the emerging countries. The majority, the big portion of the nuclear will come from China, Korea, India, and Russia. And these are the countries where we expect will add to the nuclear capacity growth. And as I said, in some other countries, especially in Europe, we expect a retreat from the nuclear policies with the current policies in place. This is not what we say, what should happen. This is what we see, what would happen if the policies do not change. So all these changes in the global energy picture and the policies, what does this mean for the electricity prices? What we see is that with these developments, we see a growing divergence between the European electricity prices vis-à-vis US and China. As I said, US is already enjoying a very strong comeback, US economy, thanks to natural gas, lower natural gas prices, which feeds into the electricity prices as well. And as you know today, many companies, energy-intensive industries are moving to the United States. A very large, I think the largest petrochemical company in Germany and in Europe decided to open its new plant in the United States. In Austria, where I lived many, many years, the backbone of the Austrian economy, iron steel company, decided to move to the United States. A very large French iron steel company is opening a plant in the United States because of the cost of energy. It is affecting mainly iron steel industry, petrochemical industry, cement and aluminum industries, this cost competitiveness. And this will continue. When it comes to Europe, why do we have will we have even more higher electricity prices? 4 reasons. And the first 2 are much more important. 1, natural gas as an input to electricity generation is more expensive than United States, as I mentioned. Second, Europe did take a decision to take off the nuclear power plants which are up and running at lower cost and trying to compensate it or replace it with higher cost electricity generation technologies, which adds to electricity prices. No surprises. If you take a decision, you have to live up with the consequences. And the consequence is higher electricity prices. These are the 2 major drivers, higher gas prices and the nuclear policy change. The other 2 are the renewable subsidies, which is also adding to the higher electricity prices, but not as big as the first 2, and the carbon price we have in Europe. These are the reasons why we see that the Europe electricity prices will be much higher than US and China, which means Europe will have 3 major difficulties. 1, in terms of the heavy industries, substantial challenges, cost of production challenges. Second, the purchasing power of the European families will be negatively affected as a result of the higher energy bills, such as the electricity bills and the heating bills. And third, European foreign trade balances will be negatively affected vis-à-vis US enjoying low-cost energy, and China, which is and which will be for the foreseen future mainly relying on the coal, rather cheap coal production. And therefore, this is something that the European policymakers need to think about. Now, in EU, we want to have cleaner forms of electricity, both nuclear and renewables, and this is the current situation now. And with the current policies, with the policies that we are in, we see a decline in the nuclear power and increase in the almost all renewable sources. But the current trajectory we are in is not enough in line with the very important target we have worldwide to keep the temperature increase 2 degrees Celsius. If we take this seriously, this target, then we would need to see substantial amount of growth from renewables, but also nuclear power. Without nuclear power, it will be extremely challenging, if not impossible, to reach a 2 degrees target. Forget it. Now, before finishing, I wanted to mention one issue. The 2 degrees target has been agreed by the all world leaders. No world leader did not sign the 2 degrees target intention. The implementing laws are not put in place, ladies and gentlemen. However, all the world leaders agreed in the 2 degrees target. But at the same time, fossil fuels, oil, coal, and gas companies are booking a lot of reserves, new reserves they are buying. Now, we made the following calculation. What happens if we really reach the 2 degrees target? If we really take the world leaders' intentions seriously, whether or not these reserves, oil, coal, and gas reserves, will be used. Currently, if you look at all the reserves worldwide, coal, oil, and gas reserves, if we use all of them, what we are proven reserves, we have about 3,000 gigatons of CO2 emissions we can burn. If we use all these oil, coal, and gas reserves, which are booked by the companies, like the oil companies, gas companies, and others. But if we want to reach the 2 degrees target, unfortunately, I should say, for those companies, we can only use 1/3 of those reserves. And 2/3 of those reserves, which are already booked, both would be unused stranded assets, which is a crucial issue for the investors, because they put the money, they bought them already. This is interesting news, I thought. And climate change, as I mentioned, a crucial preoccupation of the world energy outlook. And this year, for the first time, 10th of June, we are making a special report on this, redrawing the energy and climate map. We are going to publish that report. So I took your time, and let me finish by putting my thoughts together. As you saw, the environmental, economic, and energy objectives do not go parallel, and it is very crucial for the policymakers to try to reconcile all these 3 objectives. And as I said, the changing energy outlook, the production especially, will have major implications for the economic competitiveness, especially in relative terms of the countries and companies, as well as geopolitics, which I didn't discuss today, but it will have major implications on that side as well. And one small warning to our European colleagues from somebody who follows the energy issues since a long time and makes his hands dirty with the numbers. Shifting away from nuclear power think about the consequences to us, especially in the context of these two challenges I mentioned to you, economic competitiveness and addressing the climate change. And in addition to this very, I believe, important point on nuclear, I should say, if Europe wants to improve its cost competitiveness, Europe should look at its own domestic gas consumption, including the shale gas, in a sustainable context, improve energy efficiency further, and look at the effective renewable policies. Otherwise, Europe will be a clear loser from the recent changes in the global and European energy scene. Thank you very much for your attention. Thank you.